My mother did not sit me down for a talk. She simply dragged my heavy suitcase onto the gravel driveway, popped it open, and started tossing my clothes into a plastic trash bin, exactly as if she were taking out yesterday's leftovers. I stood there, frozen in my work shoes, still smelling like the coffee and syrup from the long brunch shift, watching my life land in a pile next to the recycling. I am Kayla. I am 25 years old, and that bedroom was the only reason I could afford to stay and keep our family design studio running. But my mother, Jennifer, did not even look me in the eye when she delivered the sentence. You are an adult, Kayla. You do not deserve to be here anymore. Your brother Michael's wife, Hannah, needs this room for her live stream studio. You are just in the way. I did not scream. I did not beg. I just watched a pair of perfectly manicured hands touching my window frame from the inside, already imagining it as a backdrop for a digital camera. I realized, right then, that my loyalty to this house had hit its final expiration date. Have you ever been treated like a total stranger in your own home? Drop a yes in the comments and let me know where you're listening from. I want to know who has survived this. I did not cry on that driveway.
I did not ask why.
I just stood on the curb and watched the headlights of my Uber approach, the sharp gravel biting into the soles of my feet. Jennifer was already heading back inside, her silhouette joined by Hannah's in the warm glow of the foyer. They were probably already picking out paint swatches for my walls. My anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon even a shred of regret for what I was about to do, but there was only a cold, hard clarity. This was not an emotional breakdown. This was a balance sheet audit. I had been the silent, invisible investor in their version of a family for 7 long years, and I finally realized it had been a subscription with me footing the entire bill. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and tonight, that account was permanently closed. I sat in the back of the car, the interior smelling of lemon air freshener and artificial silence. I pulled out my laptop and let the blue glow of the screen hit my face. It was the only light I needed to see by. See, Jennifer forgot one major, critical detail when she decided I was disposable. She owned the physical building in the city of Austin, but I owned the digital soul of that design studio. I had built the VIP client database from the ground up. I had coded the proprietary design software we used to manage every single complex rendering. All of it was registered under my personal email, and it was hosted on my own private, encrypted servers. It was my intellectual property, and it was about to go completely dark. I started with the administrative tokens. My fingers moved across the trackpad with lethal, surgical precision. I revoked Jennifer's access to our project management suite first. I watched the access denied notification flash green on my screen, a small, digital firework of justice. Next, I moved to the shared cloud drive. All those high-end blueprints for the new downtown developments. The ones we were supposed to submit to the city on Monday morning? I did not delete them. That would be petty. I just moved them to my private vault and replaced the folders with a single PDF, a formal notice of service suspension. Then, I turned the master key. Our proprietary rendering engine was the heart of the business. I had built it during college, so we would not have to pay $30,000 a year in licensing fees. It was registered to Kayla Designs, Limited Liability Company, a legal entity I had formed at 18 that my mother had signed off on without ever reading the fine print. I clicked the button to suspend service. I looked out the window as we passed the studio. The lights were still on, but inside, the systems were flatlining. Jennifer and Hannah were likely staring at a connection-terminated screen right now, wondering why the world had stopped spinning. They were not shocked by what they had done to me. They were about to be shocked that I had simply stopped playing along. Inside my laptop, a different kind of sunrise was glowing, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution.
Calm.
Factual. Lethal. The engine was off, and they were about to find out just how heavy that studio was when nobody was left to carry it. Everything stayed silent for days. I did not check my phone. I did not look at the text alerts from our servers as they screamed for attention, begging for the master key I had taken with me. I just lay on my friend's second-hand couch, staring at a small crack in the ceiling that looked like a map to a place I never wanted to visit again. The apartment smelled like generic laundry detergent and the heavy, stagnant air of someone else's life. My back was sore from the thin cushions, and the hallway outside was a constant loop of muffled footsteps and door hinges. But for the first time in 7 years, I could hear my own thoughts without Jennifer's demands drowning them out. I kept wondering what I had ever done wrong to end up on a curb with a trash bag as my only legacy. But then, the clinical part of my brain took over. This was not about what I did wrong. It was about what I did too right. I was the ghost of that studio. When my father died, Jennifer did not just lose a husband. She lost the only person who actually understood the geometry of the business. I stepped into his shoes before the funeral flowers had even wilted. I was 19, carrying the weight of a legacy I had not built but felt obligated to save. Last year, when the bank was ready to foreclose on the Austin building because Jennifer had overspent on a luxury retreat she called market research, I did not hesitate. I handed over $25,000 of my own money. It was every cent I had saved from my side gigs and the modest inheritance my father had left specifically for my future. I told myself it was an investment in our name. Jennifer told me I was the heart of the family. But as I sat on that couch, the reality hit me like a cold front. She did not mean the heart that feels. She meant the heart that pumps life into a body that refuses to move on its own. I was a reliable safety net she could jump onto whenever she decided to chase a new fantasy. Why did I stay? The answer felt like a house of mirrors, distorting the truth until I could not recognize myself. I realized I had been trapped by the invisible chains of a survivor. When you grow up in a home where love is a performance and approval is a currency, you learn to buy your right to exist with your labor. I thought if I worked harder, if I designed faster, if I paid more bills, the reflection in the mirror would finally look like a daughter instead of a tool. I believed my worth was tied to how much of Jennifer's weight I could carry. I lived in a house where cruelty was normalized into family duty, a house where my mother and brother had convinced me that my sacrifice was the bare minimum. But those chains were not made of steel. They were made of my own silence. I opened a digital folder on my laptop. It was filled with my father's original blueprints, the ones I had rescued from the server before Jennifer could give them to Hannah to use as aesthetic props for her videos. I looked at the lines he had drawn, the surgical precision of his vision. He built this world for me to thrive in, not for a narcissist to use as a backdrop for live streaming skincare routines. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for far too long, and now, the account was entirely empty. Justice was not a feeling anymore. It was a ledger, and the audit was just beginning. The silence stayed in the room, but my phone started screaming on the 6th day. I did not answer. I just watched the notifications scroll across the lock screen like a ticker tape of their desperation. Jennifer and Hannah were not interested in an apology.
They were interested in an asset.
When they realized the rendering engine would not boot and the client list was a wall of encrypted nonsense, they did not look inward. They looked for a target. The first video went live at noon. It was Hannah, sitting in my old bedroom with a ring light reflecting in her eyes, dabbing at fake tears while Jennifer stood behind her with a heavy hand on her shoulder. They called me a thief. They told our 30,000 followers that I had stolen family secrets and sabotaged a legacy because I could not handle being an adult. They were trying to bankrupt my reputation before I could even find a new desk to sit at. It was a smear campaign disguised as a family crisis, but to me, it just looked like a desperate business trying to hide its own insolvency. Jennifer did not see me as a person. She saw me as a piece of equipment that had suddenly malfunctioned and needed to be shamed back into service. This was the trap of cruel normalization. To her, my years of 80-hour weeks and my $25,000 loan were not sacrifices. They were the interest I owed for the privilege of being her daughter. She had spent decades normalizing the idea that my labor belonged to the family, effectively turning my existence into a debt that could never be fully repaid. When cruelty is repackaged as family loyalty, the victim becomes a villain the second they stop allowing themselves to be used. Jennifer was a master at this. She had convinced herself that my silence was a contract and my departure was a breach. While they were busy playing victims on camera, Hannah made her move. She found an old, crumpled sketch in the bottom of the trash bin on the driveway, a half-finished blueprint for the Austin riverfront project. It was a mess of raw ideas and structural impossibilities I had discarded months ago. But to Hannah, it looked like a shortcut to a paycheck. She did not have the master key to the digital files, so she decided to trace the legacy. She submitted my trash as a final proposal to our biggest VIP developer, thinking her aesthetic touch could mask the fact that she did not understand load-bearing walls or city permits. Jennifer backed her, telling the client that the talent had stayed in the family even if the unstable element had left. They were so blinded by their own arrogance that they did not realize they were hand-delivering their own destruction to the very person they had just called a thief. I sat in my small apartment, watching the proposal submitted, alert ping on an old linked email account. I did not warn them. I did not try to save them. I just sat back and watched the clock. The professional escalation was coming, and this time, I was not the one who was going to be discarded. The hallway of my new life did not smell like burnt coffee and family obligation. It smelled like expensive glass, high-end climate control, and the cold, sharp scent of genuine professionalism. I do not remember exactly how long the transition lasted. All I know is that by the time the first Monday rolled around, I was not the same person who had stood on that driveway. I had traded my syrup-stained work shoes for a pair of sharp, black heels that sounded like a countdown every time I hit the floor. I walked into the headquarters of Coastal Grind, the city's top design firm, and the only competition my father ever truly respected. I did not go there as a runaway or a daughter seeking a handout. I went there as a strategist with an inventory of proprietary tools they had been trying to replicate for years. Blake, the managing director, did not look at me and see a dramatic adult who needed to be managed. He looked at me and saw a market advantage. He had read the analytics reports I had salvaged. He saw the numbers I had generated for Jennifer's studio while she was busy playing socialite. He did not ask about the drama. He just looked at the rendering software I had built and said, "This is yours." Legally, technically, and entirely, I told him. Within 2 weeks, I was not just an employee. I was a lead coordinator. I closed my first independent contract for $100,000, a major civic project that Jennifer had been chasing for 3 years. I did it in 48 hours because I actually understood the engineering requirements she used to ignore. My value was not a speculation anymore. It was an invoice. But while I was building, I was also auditing. I hired a legal advocate, a woman who specialized in intellectual property and labor theft. We sat in a corner office overlooking the city and did the math that Jennifer had been avoiding for a decade. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdraft, but now the interest was finally due. We drafted the papers in a single afternoon. I was not just filing for a breakup. I was filing for a reckoning. We served Jennifer with a formal cease and desist regarding the online smear campaign. Every lie Hannah told to her followers was now a documented legal liability. But that was just the opening act. The real blow was the demand for $96,000 in back wages. For 4 years, I had functioned as an unpaid consultant, performing professional architectural services under the guise of family help. In the state of Texas, that has a specific price tag. I sat in my new office, the sun setting over the Austin skyline, and watched the Courier's tracker app. When the notification popped up, delivered, I did not celebrate. I did not call to hear them scream. I just went back to my spreadsheet. I had been the silent investor in their version of family for too long. Now, I was just the bill collector. Inside, my laptop glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. Jennifer thought she had thrown out the trash. She was about to realize she had thrown out the only person who knew where the money was actually buried. I stopped looking for apologies weeks ago, but I never stopped looking at the documentation. My legal advocate called me while I was reviewing the structural requirements for the new municipal water system. Her voice was not professional this time. It was cold. She had been digging through the studio's financial history for the back pay audit and found a ghost in the ledger. Kayla, I need you to look at an email I just sent, she said. We found a private loan agreement from last July. I opened the file. It was an application for a $40,000 emergency business loan. The dates matched the exact week Jennifer had greenlit the initial renovations for Hannah's influencer garage. The bank had flagged the studio's credit as too high risk for a solo signature, so they had required a secondary guarantor. I scrolled to the final page and felt the air leave my lungs. There it was. My name. Below Jennifer's signature was a shaky, crude imitation of my own handwriting. I was not even in the city that week. I had been on site at a coastal survey 300 miles away. This was not just family drama anymore. This was a felony. Jennifer had not just thrown my clothes in a trash bin. She had identity theft my credit and my future to fund a narcissist's vanity project. She had gambled with my name while telling me I did not deserve a place in her home. My compassion had not just been overdraft. It had been stolen. I did not feel a breakdown coming on. I felt a surge of lethal clarity. This was the kill shot. This forgery removed any remaining path to redemption for Jennifer or Michael. They were not just ungrateful. They were criminals. I did not call my mother to confront her. I did not send a text. I simply hit print on the document and handed it to my lawyer. File the report, I said. Move this from civil to criminal. The audit was over. The investigation had begun. Jennifer thought she was turning my room into a studio. She did not realize she was actually building her own cage. I sat back in my chair and watched the clock. The balance sheet was finally about to be settled in full. The silence of 5:30 in the morning is usually a gift. It is the only hour when Austin feels still, before the heat and the traffic and the noise of other people's ambitions take over. But this morning, the stillness was shattered by the rhythmic, desperate pounding on my front door.
I did not jump.
I did not feel my heart rate spike. I simply set my coffee mug down on the coaster, adjusted the silk robe that had replaced my old work uniform, and walked to the entryway. I looked through the peephole. The distortion of the glass made them look like the caricatures they had always been. Jennifer was there, her hair messy and unwashed, wearing a cheap, thin jacket that looked nothing like her usual designer boutique finds. Michael stood beside her, his shoulders slumped so low he looked like he was folding in on himself. Hannah was a shadow in the back, her face streaked with ruined mascara, clutching a plastic bag like it held the remains of her influencer dreams. I slid the deadbolt back and opened the door just enough for the chain to hold. The humid morning air rushed in, smelling of impending rain and stagnant desperation. "Kayla, please," Jennifer whispered. Her voice was cracked, the authority she had used to evict me 2 weeks ago completely evaporated. The bank, they froze everything. The police came to the studio yesterday. They said there is a warrant. They asked about the $40,000 loan. "Just let us in, Kayla," Michael added, his eyes darting to the street as if expecting a cruiser to pull up at any second. "We are losing the house. The eviction notice for the studio was served yesterday. We have nowhere else to go. We are family." I looked at them, and for a moment, I saw the illusion of power in an empty wallet playing out in real time. For 25 years, I had viewed Jennifer as a monumental figure of authority, a queen who could grant or revoke my right to a home with a single sentence. But standing there now, I realized her power had never been real. It was an expensive costume she had bought using the interest on my labor. She had only been powerful because I was the one paying the bills that kept her pedestal standing. Once I pulled my rendering engine and my $96,000 in back wages out from under her, she did not just fall, she disintegrated. Their authority was a luxury they could no longer afford to lease from me. "Family?" I said. My voice was flat, clinical, and entirely devoid of the warmth they were hunting for. "Family does not forge signatures on $40,000 loans, Jennifer. Family does not throw a daughter's legacy into a trash bin to make room for a ring light." "I made a mistake," Jennifer sobbed, reaching a hand toward the gap in the door. "I just wanted Michael and Hannah to have a future." "You wanted them to have my future," I corrected her. "And now you do not even have a present." Hannah stepped forward, her voice high and frantic. "You stole our business. You told that firm about the location. You sabotaged us.
I smiled then.
It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a closed ledger. I did not sabotage you, Hannah. I just stopped holding your world together for free. It turns out, without me, your world is just a pile of unpaid invoices and construction dust. I stepped back from the door and picked up my phone. I did not look at them as I dialed. Hi, I said to the dispatcher. I would like to report a disturbance. There are some strangers causing trouble outside my house. They are yelling and refusing to leave. I do not feel safe. The shock on Jennifer's face was the most honest thing she had ever given me. She stared at me as if I were a ghost, finally realizing that the daughter who lived to please her had died on that driveway 2 weeks ago. I am still your mother, she gasped as the distant wail of sirens began to cut through the Austin morning. No, I said quietly. You told me I did not deserve a place in your home. Now, you know what it feels like to be on the other side of that door. I closed the door. I slid the deadbolt home. I did not wait to watch the police escort them away. I walked into my kitchen, finished my coffee, and opened my laptop. 1 month later, I stood in the center of the old family studio. The building had gone to auction after the liquidation, and my firm had bought it with me as the lead partner. The greasy, outdated carpets were gone. The influencer studio Hannah had dreamed of had been gutted and turned into a bright, collaborative workspace for real architects. I walked into my father's old office. It was mine now. I sat behind the mahogany desk and looked at the empty trash bin in the corner. I reached into my bag and pulled out the original, hand-drawn blueprints I had rescued from the curb. I smoothed them out on the desk. Justice had not been about the $40,000 or the back pay. It was about the freedom to finally breathe in a space that was not a house of mirrors. Sometimes you have to walk away for others to realize you were the only thing holding them up. If you have ever had to choose yourself over a toxic family, subscribe and share your story below. Let us build a community where no one is invisible,